Welcome back to another edition of Real Talk Mormonism 10. This is your humble host, D-Bays, and I've got the shades on tonight because I had a little accident with my right eye, so it looks pretty bad, but I think I'm hip to the pop culture. So if you want to call in, this is your time here. I am the host of the Mormon News Roundup, the Mormon movie reviews, and this is episode 10 of Real Talk Mormonism 10 to discuss all things Mormonism. If you follow the link that is on the bottom of the screen, you can join your humble host here. I'd be delighted to have you join the program, talk anything Mormon related whatsoever. Stump the Chump, this is your chance to shine. Be happy to take whatever calls that you have. Look at the link on the bottom of the screen. Happy to have you, whether you don't know the first thing about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or you're currently serving on the Strengthening Church Members Committee at church headquarters in Salt Lake City. There are no dumb questions. Nothing is off limits. Stump the Chump. No holds barred. I really would hope to have people who would like to defend Mormonism come onto this program and show me the error of my ways. That's what I'd really like to know. There's no script. There's no rules. That is, of course, except for YouTube's terms of service. Hey, nice shades, Colts. Welcome to Mormonism, Real Talk Mormonism 10. They simply click on the StreamYard link, and I appreciate you coming on. I may be wearing these shades more often. I really appreciate that. Now, picking up, since we don't have anybody coming on, picking up what we talked about last time, I still have not watched all of these Mormon Leaks videos here. This is Ryan McKnight, Ethan Dodge, the formerly known as the Mormon Leaks Foundation there. They changed their name to Truth and Transparency in about 2016. They ended up going out of business, although Ryan McKnight is working on a book at this time, I think in conjunction with Ethan Dodge, where now, last time we were here, we looked at a couple of these videos in which the apostles obsessed over Chelsea Manning's sexuality and Julian Assange's sexuality. We looked at that. And we also looked at what they fret over the single adults. And we looked at what they discuss politics with Senator Gordon Smith. These were absolutely fascinating. I want to look at a couple of more of these. I've never watched through all of these. I've only watched snippets of them. So it's time to check out what Elder Holland is saying. Caught lying to Harvard students. I believe he was caught lying about Proposition 8. At least that's what the video shows. So let's take a look at this. This is, again, Ralph Hardy, LDS Area Authority in Washington, D.C. And area authority is roughly the equivalent of an archbishop for like a Catholic archbishop over a number of dioceses. He was a very influential person. In fact, it was Spencer Kimball. It was Ezra Benson, who was the basically a stake president in the Washington, D.C. area, who later became an apostle. The church usually puts a high-ranking person into the Washington, D.C. area, which is, of course, where I live at this time. Then we had Gordon Smith, the U.S. Senator in Oregon. We discussed him a great deal last time. I took great issue with Gordon Smith. And Jeff, will I bet? Yeah, sure. Jeff, go ahead and hop onto the program and just follow the link. And as long as you're going to talk Mormon related, then we can certainly be happy to have you onto the program. Welcome all takers on Mormonism. And finally, Jeff Holland, Quorum of the 12 Apostles. At this time of the Mormon Leaks in 2009, he was a somewhat junior apostle, but now he is the acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. It helps in the chat if you tell me what it is that you want to talk about. That would help out a great deal. But Jeffrey R. Holland speaking at Harvard in 2012 here. Andy, what's on your mind here? What Mormon thing do you want to talk about, Andy?
Yo, what's up? I don't know, man. I'm lonely. My girlfriend just left me 3 days ago.
Hey, I'm sorry to hear that. If you don't want to talk anything Mormon related, then this isn't the show for you. You want to talk Mormonism or what?
Well, now you gotta tell me about, like, I'm a Christian man myself. Okay.
I need to tell you about more. So the whole purpose of this call-in show, my friend, is that you want to talk about something that's Mormon related. So if you want to talk Mormonism, that's great. That's what the show's about. If you don't want to talk about it, you came to the wrong place. So what do you want to talk about? This? What LDS thing is on your mind here tonight, my friend?
I see. But I would love to learn about it. Like, I'm from Denmark, but okay.
Well, that sounds great. It doesn't sound like you have much that you want to talk about as far as in particular here. So we're going to run through these. If you come back and want to talk about something in general, be happy to talk about with you. But it doesn't sound like you've got anything on your mind here that you really want to talk. So that's why I don't see a point in carrying on a conversation with you if you're a vacuous mind. Come back. Let's talk about something. This is a chance to talk about Mormonism, not just, that you're lonely for your girlfriend. Sorry to hear that. I wish you the very best, but unless you got something more constructive to say, we're going to go on to this. Now, Jeffrey R. Holland speaking at Harvard in 2012. We believe that anybody who takes public office and puts his hand on a Bible to declare loyalty to that constitution for that or us, that is a moral, religious, political, social, call it what you will, commitment. And if there is pardon me, if there's inherent in that the idea that some Latter-day Saint would take his direction from Salt Lake, as opposed to from the electorate or from the law or from whatever it is he's sworn to, that would be as large as a compromise. That would be as dramatic a compromise for Latter-day Saint as it could be for anybody else in the United States of America. Hey, Jeff, thanks for coming on. Unfortunately, appreciate you coming on, but I didn't see anything of value there. But anybody who wants to talk Mormon related stuff, happy to do it. Jill, Jeff, easy come, easy go. Let's see what Jeff Holland says here at Harvard. I'm pretty sure he talks about Proposition 8, which is, of course, the church's involvement in these in overthrowing the same-sex marriage that had been legalized at the appellate level in California, and the church was successful in doing that. Let's take it. Let's
believe that anybody who takes public office and puts his hand on a Bible to declare loyalty to that Constitution, for us, that is a moral, religious, political, social, call it what you will, commitment. And if there is inherent in that the idea that some Latter-day Saint would take his direction from Salt Lake, as opposed than from the electorate or from the law or from whatever it is he's sworn to, that would be as large a compromise, that would be as dramatic a compromise for a Latter-day Saint as it could be for anybody else in the United States of America.
Though I can't remember any Latter-day Saints that were permanent members of his staff, it was fair to say that his staff in the Senate was church broke. In fact, not many months ago, his legislative director called me on the phone and he said, "Ralph, you haven't called us for 6 weeks. What are we supposed to be doing?"
I know and have been a critic of the Iraq War, but I also admit to you I voted for it because I felt the Lord's hand in it. I hope it works out, but I can promise you this: you'll never send missionaries to the Arab Street until the rule of law exists in Arabia. And it has taken root in Iraq. And ultimately, I think that if that succeeds, there will be an opportunity to begin building the church in the Middle East, which is a deeply troubled place.
Yeah, we talked about this a great deal in the last episode. This is just reiterating what we heard before. But what Jeff Holland is saying is that, yeah, anyone who swears to public office shouldn't put the church first. But that's definitely not the message that they said behind closed doors. Chris K, welcome to the program. What Mormon thing do you want to talk about, Chris?
Wait, no, I just found you guys. Your shit. What's up?
Yeah, what Mormon item is on your mind here, Chris? What Mormon thing do you want to talk about?
You guys are you're Mormon?
Well, what this show is about Mormonism. What Mormon item do you want to talk about?
I got a question. So Mormon, like you guys, like have multiple wives, right?
Well, they used to have multiple wives. It's kind of a complicated question. This is a common misnomer. The church gave up polygamy in this life in the early 1900s. Now only the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and other branches of the Restoration still do the wives in this life, although the celestial polygamy is still on the books in the afterlife. So it's a common misconception. Anybody who can engages in polygamy now is excommunicated.
Is that what it's called, polygamy, when you have multiple wives?
Yes, polygamy is basically one man, multiple women. They also have polyandry, which is where you have one man with multiple women who are already married. But yes, polygamy, multiple wives. It's actually been decriminalized in Utah, but something the church definitely does not practice anymore. It's a common misconception. Up to 30% of people think that Mormons still practice polygamy. It's a big problem for the church because, it doesn't happen anymore, at least in this life.
Are you like what's it called? Elder or something? What's it called?
What do you mean?
I know that they have like ranks or whatever, like, and they send people out like to go out and like spread the word of Mormonism.
Oh, you mean like missionaries?
Missionary, yeah. That's what I say, missionary. Yeah.
Yeah, I once upon a time I was a full-time missionary. I served 2 years for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints right here in the Washington, D.C. area, full-time. It was a volunteer position. Yeah, I spent a lot of time pounding on the streets, knocking on doors. Yeah, you probably have come across the missionaries for sure. Yeah, they're very common.
I have. And they gave me the Book of Mormon. Yep.
Yeah, and did you read it?
I'm baptized Catholic, but you know what I mean? I talked to him, so.
That definitely wasn't your cup of tea, it sounds like.
Well, was weird because I had like a the time that I talked about had like a inspiration or whatever. So I don't know. They said that Jesus loves me, right?
Well, as a Catholic, are you down with that or no? You're not going for that?
I mean, I don't know. I'm drinking beer, so I'm kind of buzzed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely get it. I see no evidence whatsoever that any person who has ever passed on before us currently loves us. And I see no reason to believe that it is a good thing if any of them did love us. I mean, my father passed away in 2005. I think he stopped loving me. I mean, I have no reason to believe that he still loves me now. I mean, once a person's mind is gone, then there's no more love that's left to be done. But Chris, what do you think about Mormonism in general? Can you sum it up for us?
Well, the church has like was it the pinnacle? Was it
temples?
Well, is there a cross? There's no cross.
Yeah, the church generally doesn't do the cross thing, although they have kind of changed their mind at least a little bit on the icons. But the church has generally in the past avoided crosses. It's not big on the cross thing. Instead, it wants to emphasize the idea that Jesus is the representative and not the cross. That the Mormonism believes that you shouldn't emphasize the cross because that's an instrument of torture. Even though the church has kindly waffled on that in the last couple of years, but Mormons are big on crosses.
You could look it up. I'm in Vegas, right? They're talking about putting a temple out here, a big temple, Mormon.
Oh yeah,
have you heard about it?
Oh yeah, big time. Now, what are your thoughts there? They already have a temple in Las Vegas. They want to put another one up. What do you think about that?
I say whatever, dude. Go for it. If people want to like be Mormons, go for it. I don't care. Ain't gonna do that.
You got no issues with it, huh?
Let them do it. Who cares? I'm not a. I have this feeling that religion is kind of a way to control people, though.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't want to do this because I don't want to go to hell, or you know what I mean? Oh, I better be good because I don't want to get in trouble because I don't want to sin. So that it's kind of going through my shit right now.
Oh yeah, actually, let's play a video on that, Chris. Now that you brought that up here, the lawsuit has been filed against the city of Las Vegas after the approval of the LDS Church near Lone Mountain.
Yep.
This is your neck of the woods here. So let's see what's going on here, and let's get your reaction to this, Chris.
Against the city of Las Vegas after their approval of a proposal to build a new LDS temple near Lone Mountain.
Fox News' Kim Passoff has been going over it all and joins us now with the details of the suit.
Yeah, this is that lawsuit. A lot to go over here in 26 pages. The suit is filed on behalf of a group called the Rural Nevada Preservation Alliance, who say that they are property owners living near the site where the temple is set to be built. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is planning to build on 20 acres off of Alexander in Grand Canyon. After months of debate last month, the city of Las Vegas project was.
That's in the Lone Mountain area. Do you know where they're talking about here, Chris?
I mean, I feel like it's southwest. I mean, I want to almost find out exactly where that is.
Temple location.
Let's find out exactly. It's southwest of the 15 freeway, right?
The new temple will be on the corner of Hickman Avenue and Grand Avenue. Hey, Hickman and Grand Avenue. Do you know where that is?
It sounds familiar, but is it it's on southwest, I think, right? Let's see, is that
Hickman Avenue, right? This is where well, that's not it. Let me see here. Sorry.
Alabama.
Let's check it out here. Hickman Avenue, Las Vegas.
Yeah.
That's Hickman. It's not pulling up for me here. It's in North Las Vegas. That much I do know.
It's on the west. It's on the. I knew it was on the west. All right.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere about in this region right over here. Okay, it's in the north area there.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I'm almost positive. Let's keep watching the rest of this.
All right.
Some design modifications to the 70,000 square foot temple, including limiting the height to 196 feet. In the lawsuit, the petitioners claim, quote, the city of Las Vegas abused its discretion and made errors of law, including the construction application. And the suit also says that back in 2003, the city of Las Vegas denied a request for a 77-foot cross at Canyon Ridge Church because it exceeded a 35 foot height requirement. Then again, in 2009, they denied the International Church of Las Vegas an 85-foot prayer tower. We're still going through this lawsuit, and of course, this is something that Fox 5 will continue to follow.
That's
What's your reaction?
I mean, who cares how tall it is? Listen, who gives a fuck, right? Like we got fucking casinos that are fucking like way taller, right? What the fuck?
Yeah, but those casinos are not in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Those casinos.
Who's crying about it? Who's crying about it? Who gives a fuck, dude? I mean, fuck. I don't know. I don't live over there. I don't live over there, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, the casino is in a casino district. I mean, you don't put a house in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip.
Well, that's what I think. The people that live there don't want a big, tall church.
Yeah, I mean, you don't put a house on the Strip because that's not where a house belongs.
Yeah, I would have a house.
And you don't put a casino out in the middle of a residential neighborhood. We have zoning rules for a reason here, and people naturally don't want to have a giant building that is next to them that's this size. I mean, you don't put casinos out casinos are they're districted for certain zones, and same with churches, same for houses, same for schools. Everything has a zone.
The last part of that, though, I think the people are tripping out because they wanted to have like was it Christian church that they wanted to make it tall, but they denied it. So those are the people that are tripping out, right? Go back, rewatch that. The last part, they denied some other church. So those are the people that are tripping on it because they're like, wait, I want to do the same thing, but now you guys can let this guy, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, people really want to. I mean, we have zoning laws in this country, and they're generally enforced pretty well, in my opinion. What the lawsuit is alleging is that the church really went around the zoning laws altogether and did a lot of shenanigans here, and it's made a lot of people upset that this is an absolutely extraordinarily large building in the Las Vegas area. I mean, the houses that are in this area are generally 35 feet at a maximum. There's no other buildings in this entire area that are higher than 35 feet. All of a sudden, you're coming in with a 175-foot building in the middle of a quaint residential neighborhood. When those buildings, there's lots of places in Vegas on the Strip. I've been to Vegas many times. My brother lives there. There's lots of places in Vegas that this type of building would go great in. Right next to your house, that's where people are having the issue here.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Not only that, probably fucking there's gonna be a lot of like traffic, on Sunday.
There is.
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of traffic that's going to be associated with this because a lot of Mormons are going to be coming into this thing. It has a lot of considerations that go along with it. And, people, that's why there's this big lawsuit that's associated with this thing. People are not digging this. And any last thoughts? Yeah. Okay, Chris, any last thoughts on Mormonism here? Are you going to join the Mormon church?
I mean, no, I'm kind of like a heathen right now. I'm a heathen.
No, why wouldn't you join the Mormon church, Chris? Why not?
I think I have like a demon.
What is a demon? I'm not familiar. I've never heard. I don't know what a demon is. What is it?
I think I'm possessed right now.
Yeah, but possessed with what? I don't know what a demon is. Can you illuminate that?
I don't know. You know what tarot cards are?
Yeah, I know what tarot cards are.
You want me to read your tarot cards?
Last thing. Okay, this is the last thing. Yeah, give me my tarot reading. I appreciate that. This is going to take us out though.
Well, you gotta be serious about it, dude.
I'm serious. I'm dead serious. Give me my tarot reading. I'm ready.
Like you gotta be, because I gotta focus.
I'm focused, Chris. I'm ready here.
But you're Mr. Religion over here, so I don't know. I think you think it's fucking bullshit. Right?
I never said that, but I have no reason to believe that there's anything supernatural about a tarot reading. But I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me hold on. What does your chat say? What's up?
Chris, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for visiting with us. Thanks for letting us know. You can come on some other time. I really appreciate that. We're going to hop back over to, I was hoping for a tarot reading. Like I said, I have no reason to believe that anything special comes from a tarot reading, but it's no big deal. Let's go back to the Mormon apostles and hear what they have to say. Chris, really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for coming on to Real Talk Mormonism. You're welcome back anytime, my friend.
For in my experience, he always stood ready first and foremost as a high priest and as a covenant member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint, and receptive and able and willing to serve its most vital interest in Washington and in fact, internationally.
This is a fiction, and I want to take it out of this election year, and you can make it for the next 90 years. It's a legal fiction. It's an imaginary anxiety, though honestly asked, because a lot of people are asking it, whether somebody's loyalty would somehow be to the president of the church. His loyalty is to that oath of office that he takes with his hand on scripture that we espouse, and he's supposed to do what his conscience and the elected officials and the electorate of his constituency tell him to do, and that'd be a pretty adamant position for us to take.
Yeah, this seems to be in diametric opposition to what we heard earlier with Senator Smith saying that his loyalty was to the church first and not to his oath of office. Now, Jeffrey Holland seems to be contradicting that. Now, I'm not saying that is a lie, because Gordon Smith said that that's what he is doing, but that is not necessarily what the church is asking him to do. The church definitely appreciates if they are placed first, but I don't know if they asked them to do it. So saying that someone is lying, you really need to have intent to deceive. What we're seeing here is a disconnect between the church, what the church is espousing with Jeffrey Holland and Gordon Smith. I don't see a level of deception here. I do see some incongruous behavior, though. That's for sure.
Brethren, I'm honored to be in your presence. My parents, Mylon Smith and Jessica Udall, raised me with a fundamental principle, and that is to follow the brethren. And so while I'm somewhat accustomed to speaking with United States senators and even presidents of the United States, I stand humbly before you because I know who you are, and I know my covenants, and I know the role that you play in this world. If you want to know my position on issues in relationship to culture, they could find them in my bishop's handbook.
The last thing this church would do would be to tell an elected officer what to do, because that runs contrary to the very commitment we've made to the principle of that government by law.
Well, again, people want to say that to take this as a lie. I don't take this as a lie. The church has made suggestions to Senator Smith for what to do. They haven't told him. I mean, they have no ability to compel him, but in order for someone to commit a lie, you need to have a high bar of lying. And if the church suggests that Gordon Smith, hey, we would appreciate it if you would take this up, that's not a lie. I'm not seeing the lie here. I'm sorry. I just don't see it.
I just can't stress what it means to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to have which we've had five temple recommend carrying high priests in the United States Senate, and a large number in the House of Representatives, what it means to the transaction of business, to have access, to be able to influence decisions, to reach beyond our shores. And as I said in my introduction, what Senator Smith has done, and I can say the same for our other brethren of both parties, it is of inestimable value to this church.
There is nothing quite as effective as when Ralph Hardy calls me and says, we need a meeting in Rome, we need a meeting in Madrid, we need a meeting in Belgium. A U.S. senator can get those meetings. And the Latter-day Saints tend to excel in all kinds of professions, but not necessarily in the professions of government. And having them in there and knowing that their temple recommend is more important than their election certificate is of inestimable value in terms of what I have seen.
Like I said, I'm not seeing the absolute lie here. What I see is a disconnect in between these two items, which is the church suggesting to Gordon Smith certain things that it wants to have. It says, we'd love to have a meeting with this. We'd love to have you bring a bill up on here. I do question, as we said in the last Real Talk Mormonism, I question greatly Senator Smith's allegiance to his oath of office. I think that's a real problem here. I'm not seeing a particular lie where it says that he's absolutely caught lying to Harvard students. I'm not seeing that. But I do see a problem here. Okay, next one. We already talked about discussing politics here. Hey, we should have brought this up with Chris here, in which the apostles crack jokes about gambling in Las Vegas and joking about 9/11. What the heck? Let's watch this one.
Global uncertainties become personal in the 401k.
Yeah, of course, this is Elder Gong, the assistant to the 12 at this time, and he became an apostle, I don't know, about 9 years after this particular leak recording.
The Internal Revenue Code 401k provision from 1978 allows deferral of taxes on income saved for retirement.
I love how he's giving them a briefing here that is just like kindergarten level investment strategy. Like, these guys don't even know what a 401k is, and why should they? They're handsomely compensated by the church. They don't need 401ks. They have a pension, and they have no financial worries whatsoever.
There are, of course, various retirement vehicles. 403B, 457s, KEOs, IRAs, and so on, but 401k is the familiar proxy name for defined contribution retirement plans. 65 million Americans own 401ks, worth $4.5 trillion at year-end 2007, today worth about $3 trillion. Says the wife to the husband, I told you not to check the 401k. Some call downsized 401ks 201Bs.
This is what constitutes big-time Mormon humor here. They call me underwhelmed.
In part to shift retirement responsibility to individuals, retirement plans definitely moved from defined benefits in the 1930s through the 1970s to defined contributions in the 1990s.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about the shift in the American culture where we used to have a lot of people who worked for the same company their entire lives got a defined benefit plan, meaning a pension, old school style pension, and that basically went away. And a lot of companies moved away from it because it's financially unstable.
In the 1990s, defined contribution 401k plans brought Americans into the market, often through mutual funds. Thus, in 1980, less than 6% of American households owned mutual funds. By 2007, 44% did. No wonder so many feel angst as markets decline. Well, up yesterday 10% and holding, it seemed steady, at least as when I saw it a few minutes ago. The Dow Industrials, as you know, lost 5.4% last week, 23% last month, and 41% over the last year.
Now, it's, of course, these videos were leaked in 2009, so we're referencing back to 2008 with the absolute financial panic that happened thanks to, people, the subprime mortgage crisis. And the church was involved with that, by the way. The church had Beneficial Life at that time in 2008, which was feeling the hurt there. And the church still has Beneficial Life, even though you can't purchase new plans on it, but it honors the old plans. So the church had to bail out its own for-profit insurance company, Beneficial Life, in 2008. And Gong here is referencing the fact that the market really took a monster dive in 2008. I mean, we saw a huge amount of panic and a huge amount of suffering. And I might add that the church at this time absolutely really bailed out none of the members, but it only bailed out its for-profit insurance company. And according to Lars Nielsen, that type of distribution is illegal, which was part of David Nielsen's complaint to the IRS. So yeah, he's bringing the apostles up to speed here. Gong he's just a great presenter. He's a smart dude. No doubt about it. You can tell that he has a lot of good administration experience.
The Congressional Budget Office testified 15 to 20% losses across retirement plans could, quote, lead people to reduce or delay purchases of goods and services or delay their retirement.
Yeah, and the Congressional Budget Office for me is a very, very trusted source. It's a nonpartisan source that a lot of people in Congress look to. And Gong spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill. So I'm not surprised that he's quoting from the Congressional Budget Office here, because it is the gold standard out here in Washington, D.C. for nonpartisan analysis of a wide variety of different bills.
Imagine a perfect storm when Social Security and state and local government retirement provisions lose value at the same time as 401k retirement plans. Social Security statements, here's an example that came to me recently in the mail, now carry this disclaimer, page 1, right column, quote, Social Security is a compact between generations. In 2017, it's 9 years from now, we will begin paying more in benefits than we collect in taxes. Without changes, by 2041, the Social Security Trust Fund will be exhausted.
Yeah, I mean, what Gong is really referencing here is the fact that right now we are taking money out of Social Security to really subsidize other aspects of our government. But by time 2041 comes around, and I believe that that's pretty accurate, that there won't be enough money to pay Social Security, and we'll have to have other parts of taxes or the government's revenue to make up for that. Now, I do believe that in particular, the Social Security Disability Fund is already running over. In other words, there's not enough money in contributions to the disability portion to cover the amount that's going out, because disabilities have really gone up in the last few years. People are living longer, and people are more likely to make these type of claims. So yes, he's bringing up an acute point here that we need reform to our Social Security system if it is going to be able to be sustainable. Right now, it is on an unsustainable path.
State and local government retirement plan assets declined by more than $300 billion between second quarter 2007 and second quarter 2008.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about the financial panic wiped out a huge amount of not only 401ks, but a lot of things that people were counting on. It's a monster problem that these guys are still reckoning with.
Well, the 20 largest public pension plans have funded ratios of about 90% on average. Some smaller plans have funded ratios below 60%. Our credit default swaps, a form of derivative, the next shoe to drop. The red bar on the left shows $54.6 trillion in credit default swaps outstanding, is larger than world gross domestic product, the gray bar in the middle. Credit default swaps are also larger than the combined total value of all stocks on the New York Stock Exchange, U.S. gross domestic product, and U.S. national debt, shown the black bar on the right. In fact, credit default swap market nearly doubled each year from 2001 through 2007. Some politely call credit default swaps, quote, an unregulated, uncapitalized insurance market.
Yeah, I mean, basically, my understanding here, I'm definitely not an expert in this. So the credit default swap says that you sell a package of subprime mortgages from a bank, and you say, well, if that fails, then it's going to be insured. And the problem is that so many of these insurers, when all of these bad subprime mortgages were bundled together and that they said that they were going to insure them, well, guess what? The insurance didn't come through. The insurance failed. I mean, somewhat similar to how beneficial life also failed. These credit default swaps were absolutely a monster problem and led to a big issue.
Others more bluntly call them gaming contracts, a form of leveraged financial gambling.
Exactly.
In 2002, in the Berkshire Hathaway annual report, Warren Buffett called derivatives time bombs, quote, financial weapons of mass destruction, carrying dangers that, while now latent, are potentially lethal.
Yep.
Those older have less time to recover from market declines. In the church, 774,000 members are 65 years or older, about 8%. 317,000 members 65 and older constitute about 6% of the international church, which is younger on average than the church in North America. In the United States and Canada, 457,000 members are 65 or older.
Notice that in the United States, members are definitely older than international. That's because the church is having, a large amount of proselytization in areas like the Philippines and Africa, where the new converts tend to be much newer or much younger. The church in North America, especially in the last couple of years, has gained almost no converts whatsoever. So the church continues to age in the United States, and abroad, it's a little bit younger.
About 10%. What happens when a temple-married senior couple, husband aged 63 to 65 years old, planning to serve a mission, sees a retirement drop? According to the Research Information Division, if anticipated senior missionary service is delayed, intervening financial, health, or other family factors can make it difficult for some senior couples ever to serve.
Research Information Division. The church has a number of research arms inside of it that conduct surveys. They send out emails to people. They want to keep the pulse on it. And basically what they're saying here is if, getting close to serving a mission as a senior missionary, if you don't have the finances for it, then you put it off, then it might not happen.
Mission expenses are difficult, of course, for senior couples to calculate. These expenses vary by location and country and unpredictably increase with a weak U.S. dollar.
Yeah, and what he's pointing out here is that the junior missionaries, the 19, 20, 21-year-old typical guys that you see in the white shirts and also young women as well, they have a flat rate that they pay, and it's between $400 and $500 a month. But senior missionaries, it is not on a flat rate. It is based on locale, and it can be up to $2,000 a month that you have to pay to become a senior mission. So the costs are very much more acute for senior missionaries who can serve up to 3 years. I mean, imagine spending $2,000 a month for 3 years. That obviously adds up very rapidly. That's, what is that, $25,000 a year, $75,000 just to serve one of these 3-year senior missions. I mean, it's very, very expensive here. And if there's a market crash like we saw in 2009, you're going to see a decrease in those senior missionaries, most likely.
Many senior couples may feel the need to help children and grandchildren.
Yep.
As part of a general monitoring of financial and spiritual trends, would it be useful to track senior couples who ask to postpone serving, who ask for early releases due to rising financial challenges, or who request assignment changes to less expensive locations within their own mission boundaries?
Yeah.
In conclusion, the heritage of the saints is to grow together by spiritual refinement through trial.
And to hoard the widow's mite. Don't forget that the church already founded Ensign Peak about 12 years earlier than this. The church is still rolling in the Benjamins. Ensign Peak alone at this time is worth, I don't know, $60 billion by itself, maybe more. So, I mean, the heritage of the saints is to grow together and send that money to Salt Lake City, not to help one another.
Whether over the fence or across the world, each generation can be taught to prepare.
I mean, this goes back to the old trope of the food storage ideas that everybody needs to have your food that's in the basement of your house just in case there's some kind of a disaster.
And may it be useful to monitor financial and spiritual impacts on specific groups of members: children, young women and young men, young adults, or seniors. Today's update. Comments or questions?
I think you convinced me. I'll delay my retirement.
It's always amusing to see these guys joking around about retirement when they are so financially set for the rest of their lives. These guys, when they retire, they are worth millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. We know that Ballard, for instance, received almost $10 million in total church salary for his entire life. And these other guys, they don't have a care in the world. They're appointed for life. There's absolutely no ability to get rid of them. We have not excommunicated an apostle from the church since, I believe, 1960, or maybe it was even 1955. It hasn't happened in 70 years. And no matter what they do, there's no accountability. So meanwhile, so think about this. We are in 2009. There's a lot of saints right now who are significantly struggling thanks to the financial panic of 2008. And don't forget that the church did not come to any members' rescue during this entire time frame, right? They just looked out for numero uno. They bailed out themselves, their beneficial life, and they let the members suffer on their own. Now, we're going to joke around about, see, Gong here has brought up a very, very good point here that people in the church are hurting. Gong is smart. And that they're delaying missions and they got to take care of their families. And we've got problems here with the finances of the church members. And instead, what does L. Tom Perry? He thinks it's funny that he's going to delay his retirement. You think that that's some kind of a joke out there while people are suffering? You think that's funny? I don't think it's funny at all. I think that's absolutely abhorrent.
Well, what was that credit derivative you referred to that had such huge figures associated with it?
Credit default swaps.
Swaps? Yeah. What is that?
Yeah, Elder Oaks, this is the cover story from Fortune magazine called the $55 trillion credit. These are essentially contracts. Let me give you the example that I found clearest. American International Group insured bonds for companies and enterprises around the world, including Lehman Brothers. When Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, the bonds that Lehman Brothers issued, billions and billions of those bonds, called on AIG Insurance. AIG then, having initially figured never to have to pay those, suddenly had these contracts which became due. That affected, of course, its own credit ratings, its ability to raise the cash that it needed to cover its positions and so on. As of June 30th, the number was the number that we showed there, about 55 million. Since June 30th, some of that has been unwound. The leverage is starting to be unleveraged, as it were. But it's still a huge number. I mean, it's surprising that it's larger than world GDP.
Yeah, and just to make sure that I understand that correctly, so nobody wanted these subprime mortgages. So a bank would make a subprime mortgage, then they would bundle them together in these investment packages. But nobody wanted these packages because they were so freaking toxic. No, I mean, people don't want to buy these subprime mortgages because these are mortgages that people would get when they couldn't afford a normal, subprime. Your credit is poor, so you're selling homes to people who have bad credit or bad, bankruptcies or other issues. So nobody wants to buy those in these bundles. So you would have these credit default swaps, which said that these insurance companies like AIG Insurance or these other insurers would insure these investments so that the banks would go ahead and buy them. All of a sudden, we had a financial panic and all of these came due. And that's what brought the market to its knees. That's why we saw the unprecedented step of Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers going out of business. And it's all from those credit default swaps, as Gong is talking about.
That's part of what's lurking out there still that I think gives many people cause to pause and say that despite some happy news yesterday, we're probably not out of the woods.
Would it be accurate to say that these credit default swaps are the equivalent of life insurance, but the policy is written on the integrity of corporate bonds or things like that?
Yes, I think that Elder Hales and others who have specialized expertise may be able to correct me, but that's, as I understand it, what it is. And
I do. It's interesting here that Dallin Oaks, he doesn't play any games with the questions as we watch them. He doesn't joke around. He gets right to the heart of it. And when he doesn't understand something, he drills down into it. I mean, there's a reason that Dallin Oaks is, a Supreme Court justice and is second in line to the church is because, again, all these men are very, very smart. You can tell who the smart ones are. Gong, Oaks, smart cookies.
Because it's unregulated and uncapitalized, it works fine so long as no one calls them.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's really a form of gaming.
The other party of this is part of the old maid scenario. They were insuring defective instruments at the time that they did it. And not only that, but other investment houses would insure other investment houses, so that it was the delusion of collusion that I talk about. They all knew that they were dealing with defective merchandise, but they never thought they'd default on it because they thought they could work their way through it.
Yeah. So, by the way, this is Robert D. Hales, who was a member of the presiding bishopric. And so the people who are in the presiding bishopric are typically individuals with a strong financial background, which Robert D. Hales had. And don't forget that Hales here was one of the 3 founding members of Ensign Peak. It was Robert D. Hales, it was Eyring, and it was, oh my gosh, I forgot the third one. Sorry, but he's one of the founding members of Ensign Peak. So he's one of the few people in this room who knows the totality of Ensign Peak. Maybe the rest of the apostles don't know. That's the word on the street, is that it was on a need-to-know basis. I do like the look that Jeff Holland is giving in this particular clip. I think that's a really good look for him right there, by the way.
Yeah. I've never heard of these before. That's why I had to ask for a definition.
A little like life insurance.
Now, it's part.
Yeah. Everybody in the world.
After you
Everybody in the world is affected by AIG. Every nation, every corporation, and many small companies and individuals. And the sad part about it is that if you take the ratings that were put on the instruments that a lot of this done, if you take Standard & Poor's, I won't go into it, but they were defective in their ratings as well. And they have frozen. I've had people call me, they can't even get Standard & Poor's to rate bonds they need for their business, for their capital, for their mergers, because right now they're readjusting everything. They're literally having to stop the merry-go-round to find out where all of this is. And it's virtually impossible, but that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and see, this is the other problem, is that Standard & Poor's rated all of these investment packages as A+ standard. So they said, these are good to go. Well, it turns out that none of them were A+, most of them were F. So the rating system, the entire system, like we said earlier, like Gong brought up, was unregulated and was a ticking time bomb. And it turned out that it blew up in 2008. For those of you capitalists out there like myself, you think capitalism really works. Well, this is an example of what happens when capitalism runs amok. Without some kind of government regulation, the market has no self-correcting power. So as much as I want to keep my hands out of private industry, it does have to be regulated in some capacity. Otherwise, the entire system can be brought to its knees.
Is that helpful?
I think it's very helpful. Part of what's interesting, just small last footnote, if you can say it's insured, then you can take on a great deal of moral hazard. You can assuage your conscience and all kinds of things if you can persuade yourself that you've bought an insurance policy.
Yep.
I was chairman over at Beneficial for a number of years, and I looked at life insurance. And it amounted to this. They looked at charts, and they bet that I was going to live so long. I bet that I wasn't, so I started paying them money to prove it.
Now, he's talking here about being on the chairman of the board of Beneficial Life, which was just bailed out. And the apostles really run through the different for-profit ventures that the church has. Those apostles will be on the boards of directors for those for-profit companies, and they will typically cycle through all of the church's for-profit companies. So he's talking about when he was the chairman of the board for Beneficial Life. So, and don't forget that this is also in that time frame in 2009 when President Obama started bailing everybody out. I mean, we had the TARP program, which was hundreds of billions of dollars that Obama pushed through using the Democratic Congress. That was very, very controversial at the time because this was an unprecedented step by the government to really come into private industry and rescue an entire insurance industry and other things. And I guess it was the right decision, but the capitalist inside of me really recoils at that kind of thing, because what that teaches private industry is that you can take all kinds of these risks. Like Gong said, you can take these moral risks because it's insured. And guess what happened? We bailed out all of these reprehensible practices, and it just can encourage these businesses to take even more risks, knowing that the federal government will come to its assistance if they do anything dastardly. So it's a real issue that I've got here, but I do find it interesting here that Packer references being on the chairman of the board of Beneficial Life. He was the recipient of that $800 million, or I think it was $700 or $800 million that the church bailed Beneficial Life out because it was having problems as well. I mean, the insurance industry in general in the United States during this time was in absolute crisis.
That about what it amounts to.
It's a lot quicker to go to Las Vegas.
Now, I got to go back that up there. They're joking about gambling in Las Vegas. I want to see if I can figure out who said that.
I bet that I wasn't, so I started paying him money to prove it. That about what it amounts to.
It's a lot quicker to go to Las Vegas.
That's Robert D. Hales joking about going to Las Vegas.
Jeffrey, for a happy note, why don't you
Yeah, let's go to something like 9/11 now.
What in the heck? Is this a 9/11 joke? We gotta back all of this up. Hold on for a second. What? There's nothing like a good 9/11 joke, is there? Are you? What's going on here?
And they bet that I was going to live so long. I bet that I wasn't, so I started paying him money to prove it. That about what it amounts to.
It's a lot quicker to go to Las Vegas.
Jeffrey, for a happy note, why don't you?
Yeah, let's go to something like 9/11 now.
Nothing like a good 9/11 joke, isn't there? Isn't that the nice 9/11 joke? No, that's one of the next briefings coming up, Culch. I don't think he meant 7/11. He thought that this would be a good time to make the very rare 9/11 joke. Are you kidding me, man? Jeff, he has the empathy. He's got the compassion. He has solidarity with people out there, doesn't he? Oh boy, Jeff, really, he just seems to step in it every time there's something behind the scenes here. Just absolutely crazy. And 9/11 joke?
Let's go to something like 9/11 now. Yeah, let's go to something like 9/11 now. Let's go to something like 9/11 now.
Oh no.
Jeff, did you quote Samuel Johnson?
Well, I quoted Samuel Johnson to President Packer in Elder Oaks this morning, who said once that he tried to study philosophy once, but happiness kept breaking through.
I do. These jokes are crazy. I've never come across them before. Notice that the general authorities of the church are going to poo-poo philosophy. And why is that? The church doesn't espouse any. None of these guys are philosophers. None of these guys are really theologians. The only theologians in here is Packer, and that's it. Nobody else is a theologian, and they don't know anything about philosophy whatsoever. They poo-poo it, even though philosophy is really the cornerstone of theology. Without a good philosophical foundation, you have no grounding to stand on. But these guys, they don't care about philosophy. That's the philosophies of men mingled with scriptures. Yeah, as Coach said, the 9/11 joke there, it's 8 years afterwards, but that is still too soon. And they're going to decry anybody who doesn't drink the Kool-Aid. These guys know more than the best philosophers out there. They don't need to think about philosophy whatsoever.
Happiness kept breaking through. We hope we're in that matter.
Well, this is very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have to pause and remember that we're leading 13 million people worldwide. And this pestilence, this tsunami is touching them all. So we've got to settle down, sober up, and wise up.
This is your sum up here, is that we need to settle down. I want to play that one more time here. Again, the church did nothing during this time to help its members. It did not dip into Ensign Peak at all to help its suffering membership. But what is Packer going to say? Let's back this up.
We're leading 13.
Thank you.
We have to pause and remember that we're leading 13 million people worldwide. And this pestilence, this tsunami is touching them all. So we've got to settle down, sober up, and wise.
So we have to settle down, sober up, and wise up. Instead of saying this pestilence is hurting all 13 million of our members, and it's time to break into Ensign Peak and see what we can do to alleviate the human suffering, not only of the members, for the people that are hurting worldwide. Instead of that, he says we need to settle down and sober up. What does that mean, Packer? What in the world does that mean? The church took no responsibility whatsoever for helping its members during this time, and it did not do so in the pandemic either. The church only cares about corporate church headquarters. These guys joked around about their retirement and says, well, my retirement is secure. These guys care about numero uno, and that's themselves. Period. Bottom line. End of story. Let's go on there. These are absolutely fascinating. I can't believe I never really watched them before. We watched the Fred what about popularity of growing marijuana? Let's watch that one.
Also,
let's back it up here. These are absolutely fascinating. Oh, I apologize. These are 2010. I thought they were 2009. I think it's a mix of recordings from 2009 to 2010. Let's hear about marijuana.
Last Tuesday, voters in California, Arizona, Oregon, and South Dakota voted down measures proposing the medical use or legalization of marijuana. But as Paul Harvey would say, there's more to the story. Variously spelled, the word marijuana originates in Mexican Spanish. The Oxford English Dictionary cites its first printed appearance in 1873.
I like how he's quoting Paul Harvey because that's literally the generations for these guys. In fact, Paul Harvey, once upon a time, gave the commencement address at BYU. I think he might have done it more than once. He was very popular with Mormons in the 1960s and 70s, which is the generation that these guys grew up in. He's speaking their language.
Marijuana, as you know, is also commonly known as cannabis, hemp, Mary Jane. 14 U.S. states have decriminalized some marijuana use.
Mary Jane, baby. He's giving them the lingo, man. I love how Gong just spoon feeds these general authorities. Like they have no clue what's going on. He brings them up from like a kindergarten level.
Regarding so-called medical marijuana, in Arizona, 50.3% voted against allowing residents with specific medical conditions to be treated with certain amounts of marijuana for personal use. In Oregon, 57% voted against establishing a supply system of licensed dispensaries and producers. And in South Dakota, 64% voted against legalizing marijuana possession, use, distribution, or cultivation. In California, which of course has medical marijuana dispensaries and pays a reported $100 million in medical marijuana taxes, 54% of citizens also voted against Proposition 19, also known as Regulate, Control, and Tax Cannabis Act of 2010.
Now, I just want to bring this up real quick. I did make a video actually that talked about the church's declares war on medical marijuana, specifically in Proposition 2. So I want to talk about this because the church has talked about marijuana quite a bit. I'm going to play this quick clip here, which is where the church has declared war on weed. Let's see. We'll break back into that in a minute here. Sorry, it's just a live stream. What kind?
Hello, everyone. Liberal billionaires who absolutely hate our country.
In a surprising turn of events, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the LDS Church, has voiced its stance on medical marijuana. It has formally opposed Utah's medical marijuana initiative, Proposition 2, a move that has drawn attention from both sides of the debate. However, it's not a blanket opposition to the plant's medicinal use. The church has clarified that it does not object to medical marijuana if it is prescribed by a competent doctor and dispensed through a licensed pharmacy. This nuanced position has sparked interest and conversation. It's not a simple yes or no, but a careful consideration of the potential benefits and potential misuses of medical marijuana. It's a stance that reflects the church's commitment to the health and well-being of its followers, while also acknowledging the potential therapeutic value of this often controversial plant. This stance by the LDS Church, a significant influence in Utah.
I gotta back up that AI 1 second. Hold on.
This stance by the LDS Church, a significant influence in Utah, may impact the outcome of the initiative. Now, let's delve into the timeline of events leading up to this announcement. The journey begins with the unveiling of Proposition 2, a medical marijuana initiative aimed at establishing dispensaries in each county for patients with qualifying medical conditions. This proposition was a beacon of hope for many seeking alternative medical treatment options. As the proposition gained momentum, a different kind of coalition was being formed. Enter Drug Safe Utah, a group dedicated to safe drug practices and policies. This coalition, not entirely convinced by the benefits of uncontrolled medical marijuana use, began to voice their concerns. At the heart of their contention was the belief that Proposition 2 lacked sufficient controls for medical marijuana use. They feared that without thorough regulation, the proposition could lead to unforeseen consequences, potentially jeopardizing the very patients it sought to help. The LDS Church watched these events unfold from the sidelines. The church, holding significant influence in Utah, had been relatively silent on the matter until the summer of 2018. In a surprising turn of events, the LDS Church announced their formal opposition to Proposition 2. However, they clarified their stance, stating they do not object to medical marijuana if prescribed by a doctor and dispensed through a licensed pharmacy. This nuanced stance caused ripples across Utah, stirring up a mixture of reactions and adding a new layer of complexity to the ongoing debate. With the LDS Church joining the opposition, the fate of Proposition 2 hangs in balance. To conclude, let's summarize the key points of the LDS Church's stance. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints stands against Utah's Proposition 2, an initiative aiming to establish medical marijuana dispensaries in every county. However, it's important to clarify that the Church does not object to medical marijuana if it's prescribed by a doctor and dispensed through a licensed pharmacy. The Church's stance holds substantial sway in Utah, indicating it could significantly influence the initiative's outcome. As we wait to see the final outcome, one thing is clear. The LDS Church's stance on medical marijuana is a significant factor in the ongoing debate.
Weed, bush, skunkamola, white widow super cheese. It's the new gold rush.
I like the jokes at the end of it. So it's interesting to see the church's stance here because it didn't want medical dispensaries in Utah in order for it to be regulated by the government, but it was okay with medical marijuana if it's prescribed by your doctor. But the problem is then where are you supposed to get it if there's no government run dispensaries? This is the whole entire issue here. Now, regarding that Paul Harvey clip, I did a Mormon movie review once upon a time here of, which is one of my favorite movies here, which is Where No Flag Burns. This is a fascinating movie, by the way, one of my favorites out there, which is where the church talks about BYU as a hallowed campus. And this is one of my older Mormon movies, but Paul Harvey came to BYU in this particular film here. And I just want to play that clip for you, which is very, very interesting because Paul Harvey makes a couple of good jokes. He gave a particular speech in this film, and then he was invited back the next year to give the commencement. So BYU hosted Paul Harvey a couple of times here. So let me pull this up here and find that Paul Harvey clip for you, which is very interesting. This movie is a very important movie in my mind for the church. It really shows the mindset that BYU gives to you. Let's see if I can find that real quick here. Hold on for a second. It's about right here.
Came to BYU as a nationally noted columnist.
Yeah, here it is.
And a radio commentator. And he was greeted by the student body president here, Paul Gilbert, when he came to campus to speak at the Freedom Festival, sponsored by BYU students on December 7th, 1967. And that's also Pearl Harbor Day. Now, this was done in the George Albert Smith Fieldhouse. Now, viewing the thousands of students who had gathered for the reaffirmation of their patriotism, Harvey said, "This is what I call a demonstration." And reporting on BYU in his broadcast the next day, he said, "These days, many young eyes are prematurely old from countless compromises with conscience."
But perhaps it was the subtle dynamism, the contagious enthusiasm of my escorts which began to take hold of this travel-weary reporter. Each eager, handsome young face mirrored a sort of sublime assurance. These days, many young eyes are prematurely old from countless compromises with conscience.
I got to back that up for a second. Look how white these students are. They're greeting Paul Harvey here. Look at the whiteness level of BYU 1967. Now, this is 2 years before the church really ran afoul of the federal government here, which said, you don't have enough black students on campus and we're going to revoke your federal funding if you don't fix that. And so the church basically opened it up in the 70s for a lot more black students. But look at the white levels we'll see here. Paul Harvey, again, was invited by the Student Association to give an address. And then he was invited the next year to come back for a commencement address. So yes, the church and Paul Harvey, those conservative ideals of the late 1960s, really good bedfellows here. I just want to look at these white
Began to take hold of this travel-weary reporter. Each eager, handsome young face mirrored a sort of sublime assurance. These days, many young eyes are prematurely old from countless compromises with conscience.
Yes, many compromises with conscience, but BYU never compromises, even if it loses accreditation. Not going to compromise.
But the young lads and ladies of BYU have that enviable head start which derives from discipline, dedication, consecration.
Yes.
Head start. Is this just not literally the definition of white privilege? That these BYU students start with a head start. I'm just asking. I'm not an expert on it, but it sure sounds like white privilege to me.
For that campus, literally and figuratively, is built on rock. Brigham Young U, Mormon Church related, accepts no federal handouts, and so the prerogatives of administration remain entirely with the university's administrators. President Wilkinson prescribes propriety.
He was extremely interested, for instance, in monitoring BYU faculty tithing payments. Not only that, but whether people attended church. He really delved very deeply into the personal lives of not only his students, but also the faculty members by asking Salt Lake City for a list of all the faculty members and how much tithing they paid, and then comparing it against their salaries. He could determine if they were a full tithe payer or not. I don't know how to say it another way. He was a very intrusive president.
And practices it. The code of conduct to which every prospective faculty member and student must agree states very specifically those things which the school stands for.
He's talking about the BYU Honor Code here. Wilkinson, he derided specifically go-go girls and pseudo-sophisticated friends and surfers, announcing that women at BYU should not wear slacks in academic or administrative meetings. He tells students in the fall address, we do not want any on our campus who are beetles, beatniks, or buzzards. We have on this campus scientists who are specialists in the control of these insects, beetles, and beatniks. Usually we use chemical or biological control measures, but often we just step on them to exterminate them. For biological specimens like students, we usually send them to the dean of students for that same kind of treatment.
And those things it will not stand for. And those things include any kind of dope, drinking, smoking, or conduct unbecoming a Christian.
Yes, we don't want any conduct that's unbecoming of a Christian, like interracial dating, or wearing sandals to class, or being black.
Oh my gosh.
Rigid discipline of...
Sorry, Songs. That was for you. I'm going to back that up for Songs one more time.
Yes, we don't want any conduct that's unbecoming of a Christian, like interracial dating, or wearing sandals to class, or being black.
Oh, man.
Rigid discipline of school-agers, some protest, causes mental problems, ranging from introversion to suicide. The contrary has been proved true at BYU.
This is an absolutely outrageous statement that has not aged well. The disciplining of gay and trans students in particular has led to mental health issues, self-harm, and suicides. The so-called disciplining of LGBTQ students at BYU has always been a problem and still is. This is in direct contrast to what Mr. Harvey has claimed.
Judged by its fruits, even judged by those clear-eyed, happy faces. These undergraduates don't flounder around trying to discover right from wrong. That's been done for them.
So when the prophet speaks, the thinking is over, right? The
Yes.
students have, they know what is right and wrong because it's been done for them by prophets, seers, and revelators.
Mhm.
That's how these students can easily recognize the satanic temptations of coffee and tea and why women can't wear slacks on campus and how they know that black persons and American Indian skins, that they've been cursed by God, and how these students know that hiring female seminary teachers with kids is contrary to the will of heaven, so it is never done. When you abdicate your moral authority to an organization, you really hope and pray that that organization get things right. Has BYU done that?
No.
By the trials and errors of generations past, they don't have to relearn. They are taught by precept and example.
Yeah, and then those examples and precepts are later disavowed as just merely theories. I know, Mr. Harvey. It's all very confusing. Just remember this: yesterday's prophet is today's heretic. Hey, this is the BYU fight song. We're in the Smith Field House here because the Marriott Center had yet to be built for another 2 years.
Each seminar, and Paul Harvey was questioned from all directions. Discerning questions, some devastating, but all polite. And even here in press conferences, as everywhere, the proceedings there began with a refreshing petition in prayer.
Yes, and that petition and prayer was offered by a white man because women couldn't pray in sacrament meetings until 1978, 9 years later, and not in General Conference until 35 years after that.
And then last night, that unprecedented crowd of 15,000 jammed the gigantic field house to the rafters. 200 musicians and 1,000 voices and pageantry and an hour of Paul Harvey, and all to repledge allegiance to the world's last sweet land of liberty, and of it we sang.
Yes.
The spontaneity, the instant response of students and faculty to the words of a prayer or a pledge or a song. It was an evening like rededication celebrations used to be.
Paul Harvey is quite a speaker, isn't he? And I just love these beehive hairdos. Again, this was a patriotic celebration, right?
Hit the like. Let's go.
Nice. Nice.
Americans, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is what I call a demonstration.
This is contrasting what we saw at the beginning of the film, where demonstrators, in particular on college campuses and really across the nation, they're demonstrating for civil rights, especially trying to, end segregation, and Jim Crow laws and all the rest of that. It didn't happen at BYU. People are protesting the Equal Rights Amendment, which was absolutely squashed by the church. They want equal rights for women. That doesn't happen at BYU. They want to end the really brutal war in Vietnam. Not going to see that either. Trying to demonstrate and protest for gay rights. All of those things, they're not tolerated at BYU. They are squashed like a bug under the heel of President Wilkinson.
True.
Now it may not make news. A handful of beatniks with dirty beards hiding terminal acne could parade up and down in front of one of your public buildings with pornographic picket signs, and Time and Life and Look in the New York Times would all be here by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, as is all you get is me.
He's quite the orator, isn't he? Oh, let's review the evils that he outlined. Beatniks, oh man, dirty, bad. Liberals, horrible. Pornography, yeah, the worst. Beards? I mean, it wasn't against the BYU Honor Code until the mid-1970s. Beards? Come on, man. Even in the Temple Endowment film that was shot in 1969, the actors had beards. So Brigham Young, he had a beard. Jesus had a beard. I mean, these are some real boogeymen that he's outlining here. But the worst of all is acne? Come on, man. Acne? Now that I think about it, I think that is what Elder Packer said was one of the three great dangers of the church was acne.
You hear Governor Reagan's definition of those hippie types?
Uh-huh.
Governor says he wears his hair like Tarzan, acts like Jane, and smells like Cheetah.
Oh man, he acts like Jane. Yes, we got to bash an effeminate man. Men need to be manly men. They can't be effeminate, right?
Says he carries a sign reading "Make love, not war," and he appears incapable of either.
That is good, though. Paul Harvey, that is good. Good stuff there.
The songs are ended, the melody lingers. But it is the faces I will see in my mind's eye until I die. The beautiful faces.
The beautiful white faces.
Of young people who know where they're going because they're following an example worth following.
Wait a minute, time out there, Paul Harvey. Well, we should be following the example of Brigham Young.
Well,
Paul, I don't know if you really want to go down that road, so take caution. Take caution, my friend.
And along the way, day by day, renewing, reinforcing, revitalizing their mother faith and their fatherland.
What? We have marching troops with the mother faith and the fatherland?
Yes.
I'm getting like either a Nazi or like a North Korean vibe here. This is a little creepy.
Paul Harvey. Good day.
Hey, what happened to the rest of the story?
Okay, that's we had a slight digression there into marijuana and Where No Flag Burns. That's one of my favorite Mormon movies of all time. I have a lot of favorite Mormon movies, but what y'all think of the Paul Harvey there? He is a good speaker without question. I did find his jokes to be very entertaining, although they were sexist and absolutely inappropriate at times as well. But all I can say is Paul Harvey is definitely fits very well on the campus of the late 1960s at BYU. They did show the marching troops. If you go back and watch that whole film there, one of the reasons that the church brought out the marching troops for that is that Army ROTC had just been installed. Remember, this is 1969. This is the Vietnam era. And what we're seeing across college campuses at that time was a lot of protesting for Vietnam. We see protests for civil rights. We see protests for, the equal rights amendment was a little bit later, but yeah, equality, even gay rights, all of these things. None of these things happen at BYU. That's why BYU is where no flag burns, because there are no protests at BYU whatsoever, because they will be squashed like a bug, like I mentioned earlier. It's a good review. I know it's a little bit older, but I do stand by it for sure. Let's go back here to the Mormon leaks here. We took a huge digression here with the Paul Harvey and the marijuana. Let's see what the Elder Gong has to tell us more about marijuana. Appreciate y'all being there. If you can hit the thumbs up, I'd really appreciate that. If you want to join the show, talk about anything Mormon related whatsoever, just follow the link that is on the bottom of your screen. It should be in the description as well.
The act would have allowed adults 21 years or older to possess, cultivate, and transport marijuana for personal use. To put the initiative on the ballot, California's supporters submitted 694,000 signatures, well over the 434,000 required. Maybe we can just take a minute and put 4 elements in broader perspective. 1, the marketplace of debate needs credible voices and solid arguments. I just did a very cursory summary of the kinds of materials that were produced in California on this, and it's not surprising how many different voices on so many different positions there are. In today's media world, some provocations do not deserve response. At the same time, I was struck that in the California marijuana debate, even very unlikely arguments gained perhaps some credibility because they were repeated unchallenged. For example, quote, unlike alcohol, no deaths are directly attributable to marijuana use. And that to me just seems like a far-fetched argument, yet that came up again and again and again in the literature. So on occasion, that some of these things need to be refuted. Second, moral authority can be lost if moral voices become just another position. I was struck by some California media contrasting the Drug Policy Alliance, how's that for a benign name, Drug Policy Alliance, with the International Faith-Based Coalition. Effectively, the Drug Policy Alliance, in my view, is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they used the faith-based coalition as a rhetorical punching bag. Third, marijuana proponents employed an effective double strategy, whipsawing public opinion and gubernatorial authority. You may have seen, despite the popular vote, in 1975, then Governor Jerry Brown, now reelected, reduced marijuana possession to a misdemeanor with a $100 fine. On October 1st of this year, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger reduced the penalty to a civil infraction. So whatever the voters were thinking, the legislature, the executive has already taken a different kind of action on. Fourth, public opinion, of course, changes over time, and it's particularly changeable when well-funded and well-organized single-focus interest groups lobby over time through clever national and local legislative, executive, and judicial strategies.
I really don't think that the people are changing their minds about marijuana based on lobbying. I think people really look at marijuana. In my opinion, there's a big difference between marijuana and alcoholism, for instance. Alcohol, I think, is a far, far more destructive drug. My father was an alcoholic for many, many years, tore my Mormon family apart. My oldest brother lost 20 years of his life to alcoholism, and now he's a sponsor on AA. And I still have a brother who has also lost alcoholism. I've seen the evils of alcoholism very deeply in my own life, and I will never touch a drop of alcohol for as long as I live. I will not subject myself to that whatsoever. I think it is a truly evil substance. I understand some people out there think that they can do it in moderation. What I've seen is that far too often it takes over people's lives, and I am not capable of taking it in moderation, and I don't want to be associated with it in any capacity. I'm not drawing judgment on anybody who does drink occasionally, but I've just seen a lot of harm that comes from it. And I think the reason that we see people's ideas change on marijuana is that marijuana in no way, shape, or form is even remotely akin to alcoholism. People are never addicted to marijuana. My uncle, I'll just tell a quick anecdotal story. My uncle was a greenskeeper in Salt Lake City for many years. He wasn't a member of the church, and he smoked marijuana every single day. Then all of a sudden they instituted a drug testing policy. I think it was like in the early 80s for the greenskeepers in Salt Lake. And he just stopped taking marijuana for like 15, 20 years. Then when he retired out of the system, he became a greenskeeper at a private golf course, and now he smokes marijuana again. It's something that you can put down and take back up, and people are realizing that it is in no way, shape, or form a gateway drug to heroin, cocaine, or anything like that. So I don't think it's about lobbying. I think it's just about people's perception of the inherent lack of harm that marijuana really causes people.
These, of course, are the public opinion no on marijuana and yes on marijuana. I was struck that we sometimes focus on the high-intensity battle, but we also have to make sure that we win the long-term war.
Yeah, the church did not win the long-term war. The church has opposed to medical marijuana and other things for a long period of time. The church has lost the culture wars time and time again.
You can win each battle along the way, but if you miss the long-term war, then we end up in the wrong place.
Yeah, the church lost all the wars along the way and ended up in the wrong place and on the wrong side of history.
Church implications. I happened to be in California last Tuesday on Election Day. I was reminded of the ongoing opportunity to help our members and their families understand gospel doctrinal reasons for the hope within them. We generally define, to take a specific example, the word of wisdom to include tea, coffee, alcohol, and illegal drugs.
And of course, the church's word of wisdom revealed in 1834, codified into the Brighamite branch of the Doctrine and Covenants in section 89, which of course was not originally a commandment, but was given by way of suggestion. Only through time did it become interpreted as tea, coffee, alcohol, and illegal drugs. In fact, illegal drugs are not mentioned in the word of wisdom whatsoever, as they really weren't a thing back in 1834. It was only really in the presidency of 1921-ish that it really became a codified doctrine as a commandment from Heber J. Grant, who was really a hardliner on these things. In fact, earlier presidents before him, everyone in members of the first presidency would take brandy, they would drink coffee. In fact, there were spittoons in the Salt Lake Temple in the apostles' upper chamber rooms those pictures were leaked in 1919, I believe, sometime around the 19-teens. It really wasn't such a big deal until really Heber J. Grant came around.
Common sense dictates that not every foolish action needs specific admonition, such as not jumping into an empty swimming pool. That said, I wonder if it makes sense, if it would be helpful to our seminary students or young LDS members in California or elsewhere to be clearly reminded that popular classification of a substance as legal or illegal is not what determines obedience to the word of wisdom. And it raises, of course, the question of medical use of marijuana.
And of course, as far as obeying the word of wisdom, it's an incredibly capricious word. It's incredibly capricious. And there's never been any rationale given that has had any meaning whatsoever as to why coffee, which is a substance that we know is good for you, is prohibited, whereas Dr. Pepper, like Mountain Dew and Monster drinks, which we know are demonstrably bad for you, are completely okay.
Today's update, comments or questions? Elder Nelson?
Elder Jay Jensen and I had a priesthood leadership conference in Colorado Springs last Saturday, and it was time for their question and answer session. The very first question was medical marijuana, church's position. That's never happened to us before.
Of course, Colorado, I believe, was one of the first states out there that decriminalized marijuana. So I'm not surprised that question happened in Colorado.
This morning, a physical therapist that I work with, who also is posted at the hospital in Logan, said he has a patient, 27 years old, who has one tooth only. He's on meth. And he said that the woman comes to see him once in a while with about a 3-year-old girl. But just wasted life.
I got to back that up one more time. I'm sorry, I kind of missed that because I was talking in the chat. One moment, let me back that up here. Howie Rourke said that in 1969, the first presidency said that drinking decaf coffee in itself could not keep someone out of the temple. That is true. And that's a letter that was signed by David O. McKay when back in 1969, though, he was in incredible mental decline. And so he actually had, I believe, four counselors that were assisting him with that. So, I mean, McKay was not a hardliner on many things. And so that's one of the reasons that I think that letter was issued. But it is really not interpreted that way today, even though that was a first presidency letter. Let me back that up. What about this wasted life? I want to hear that one more time. I'm sorry.
27 years old, who has one tooth only. He's on meth. And he said that the woman comes to see him once in a while with about a 3-year-old girl. But just wasted life.
He said that the person was on meth, right? METH. I mean, Packer here is equating marijuana and methamphetamines. I mean, how disconnected can you be? Methamphetamines are a horrible, horrible substance that, ruins many, many lives. What in the name of Zeus does that have to do with medical marijuana? Marijuana is not a gateway drug to meth. Get a clue, Packer.
I can't understand our great emphasis on getting rid of tobacco and then start a project to increase marijuana. So inconsistent.
Yeah, I understand. There are 14 states, I believe, that allow medical.
I'm just going to back that up one more time.
Life. I can't understand our great emphasis on getting rid of tobacco and then start a project to increase marijuana.
Let me educate you, L. Tom Perry. Tobacco is an incredibly, especially smoking it or even chewing it, leads to cancer. It can lead to very detrimental health outcomes. It's an absolutely atrocious a substance, and people who do it really diminish their quality of life, and their lives are shortened in a significant degree. It's incredibly addictive. It has nicotine in it, and it does a real number on the nervous system, on your lungs. It's that's why the Surgeon General puts a lot of warnings on it. This is in no way comparable to the use of marijuana, and especially medical marijuana. So here we have Boyd Packer comparing smoking marijuana to methamphetamines, and then the next one is comparing it to cigarettes. These are in no way analogous. These guys are so out of touch. It is absolutely absurd.
So inconsistent.
No, it's not. These are totally different substances, dude.
I understand. There are 14 states, I believe, that allow medical marijuana, and it's so easy to get a hold of now that young people are saying they can get marijuana more easily than alcohol, which is so strictly regulated, but marijuana is kind of an underworld.
Well,
I very much doubt that most young people, especially in 2010, could get marijuana easier than alcohol. I doubt that very much.
What answer did you give Elder Nelson on the
Jay Jensen handled it.
You see Quentin Cook here, you see Elder Anderson here, and you see D. Todd Anderson here and D. Todd Christofferson. All of these guys are hanging out here. I want to hear this joke one more time. I'm sorry.
Handled it.
Well, what answer did you give Elder Nelson on the
Jay Jensen handled it.
So much for apostles giving the further light and knowledge that the Father was supposed to send to us. Nelson, who, by the way, should be uniquely qualified to weigh in on these medical marijuana issues, considering the fact that he's a surgeon, he let a lower level Mormon leader handle it. So much for the further light and knowledge, man. Come on, Nelson.
Well, we just said that we have a bishop who is a judge in Israel, and he has the scriptures and the handbooks, and that he would counsel with the individual and teach him about the word of wisdom, but the decision is there between him and the bishop and the Lord.
And that the church has no position.
The church has no position.
Wow, at this time, the church has no position on medical marijuana? This is supposed to be a moral issue. How are you taking a pass on these moral issues? You won't say either way whether medical marijuana is a sin or not? So much for seeing around corners. I thought prophets were supposed to make you smarter. Instead, Nelson is taking a rain check on weighing in on this entire issue, and other people are just saying, let the bishop handle it, and that the church has no position. Wow. So much for seeing around corners.
That is, the church has no position specifically on medical.
On medical.
But on marijuana generally.
No, on medical marijuana, yeah. That was his.
Yeah, the church took no position on medical marijuana at this time, but as we're going to see, the church has taken a position on medical marijuana. From that clip that I played to you, the church has come out against it, and we're going to review the handbook of instruction as well here to see what the modern church says about it.
President, when you raise the matter of meth, that opens a whole different world, because that young housewives can cook up on their kitchen burner. And you remember some years ago, I think Brother Alex Morrison was doing a lot to get into that in this community about how widespread, too widespread, that was along the Wasatch Front.
When the revelation was given, that revelation says, given as a principle with a promise. And it was not really considered a law until the administration of Joseph F. Smith, when he had presented in General Conference the proposition that the word of wisdom be considered as a law of the gospel. Voted.
Yeah, so I mean, you could say that Joseph F. Smith, and again, Joseph F. Smith died from the Spanish flu in, I believe it was 1918, so it really became part of the Temple Recommend entrance at around the 1920-ish timeframe. So yeah, he's echoing what I said. And notice that the apostles refer to President Packer as president. Thomas S. Monson is not in these meetings. And wait a minute, housewives cooking meth? How often do you think that? How often does that happen? Come on, man. Most meth is, not just made by a regular old Utah housewife, man. Give me a break.
The administration of Joseph F. Smith, when he had presented in General Conference the proposition that the word of wisdom be considered as a law of the gospel, voted upon and passed. All right.
Oops. Sorry, I skipped onto that one. So just a couple of last thoughts here. You see how disconnected these guys are? First of all, we're equating meth to marijuana. I do not think so whatsoever. We're also talking about how alcohol is a lot harder to come by than marijuana in 2010 Utah. I doubt that very much as well. What was the other one that they compared to marijuana as well? They said that smoking cigarettes and marijuana were equivalent. These are in no way equivalent. These guys have such a small understanding of this issue that is absolutely a joke. And then finally, the only issue for which they are supposedly qualified to talk about is the morality of the issue. And the church at this time took a giant pass on medical marijuana. They won't say whether it's a sin or not. Talk about abdicating your moral responsibility. You're supposed to be the supreme arbiter of morality on this planet, and yet you can't take a position on medical marijuana. Give me a break. Now, I just want to talk about one thing that happened in my neck of the woods here. And what we saw is President Obama in particular, who really tried to decriminalize the war on marijuana, which has been, in my mind, a complete and utter failure. It has led to a lot of horrible outcomes for people, especially in California with the 3 strikes and you're out. A couple of people who sold marijuana 3 times and now they're having a life in prison. That is an absolute tragedy. And that's why in my neck of the woods here, the marijuana governor just recently pardoned 175,000 marijuana convictions. This just happened a couple of days ago. All those people in Maryland who had low-level marijuana crimes have now been pardoned. And that means that when they go in for job interviews, that they won't have, that record that can stop them from getting those jobs and a lot of other benefits that can be tied to these things. I think that is an absolute triumph. And Maryland is going to be setting up regulated dispensaries for marijuana, which in my mind is a pretty good place to start. I saw a couple of interviews with this Maryland governor here, Wes Moore. It seems like he has the right good head on his shoulders. Now, as far as marijuana is concerned, let's look at the church's current policy on marijuana and see what we can find. As far as we know that the marijuana is still against the word of wisdom for sure, but what about medical marijuana? At this time, the church had no position on it, but as we saw from the clip that I played, the church came out against Proposition 2 and defeated it in Arizona, as Kulch said. So let's hear what this says about medical marijuana. The church opposes the use of the church opposes the use of marijuana for non-medical purposes. However, marijuana may still be used for medical purposes when the following conditions are met. I'm trying to make this big enough so that you can see it. The use is determined to be medically necessary by a licensed physician or another legally approved medical provider, or the person follows the dosage and mode of administration from the physician or other authorized medical provider. The church does not approve of vaping marijuana unless the medical provider has authorized it based on medical necessity. The church does not approve of smoking marijuana, including for medicinal purposes. Oh, I was not aware of that. So if you can't smoke marijuana, then, and it says that you shouldn't, I'm sorry, I'm a little ignorant here. You can't vape it. You can't smoke it. So, I mean, I guess you take it in an edible. I'm sorry, I'm not up on my marijuana stuff here, but I guess that's all the church is in favor of is mostly edibles. I don't suppose you can inject this stuff. I'm really not sure about that. Maybe somebody in the chat can help us out. Now, Harold Weiss says, if Utah legislature is any indication, LDS Corporation will prefer patients use synthetic cannabinoids ruled by Big Pharma. And I think that that's the message that we're getting here from these particular clips. I'm only going to play one more Mormon Leaks here before that takes us out, because this is plenty of a live stream here. Let's hear addressing the problem of Mormons marrying later in life. Let's watch that one. I think this will be our last one that Gong can educate us on. I think that'll be it for tonight, unless somebody wants to call in here. Marriage Myths and Facts. This is February 21st, 2007. I didn't realize that some of these were so early. That's interesting here. Let's see what we got here.
Repeated often enough, a myth can become a fact in the popular mind.
That's very amusing that he says that a myth can become a fact, kind of like, you know, the church's retrofitting of Joseph Smith's first vision. That's what that reminds me of.
A blurred line between myth and fact can in fact shape important expectations regarding marriage. Perhaps you are dismayed, as I was, by the January 16th New York Times headline, front page, which read, 51% of women are now living without a spouse. The story went on to say, up from 35% in 1950 and 49% in 2000, quote, probably for the first time, more American women are living without a husband than with one. Dismay came on two fronts. First, that so many women were living without a spouse, and second, that the article seemed to take some glee in proclaiming that many of these women, quote, were delighting in newfound freedom, end of quote.
Oh, yeah.
What's interesting.
Oh, yeah. We can't let women have any freedom whatsoever. We got to have our thumb on these women, and we got to make sure that they're in the kitchen. How dare any of these women want to have any freedom whatsoever? The patriarchy is here to tell them what to do. Give me a break, Gong.
Interesting as the story turns out not to be true. While marriage is under pressure, it is untrue that a majority of U.S. marriageable age women are living without a spouse. In typical laconic fashion, when the New York Times retracted or modified its story, it said simply that its earlier calculations were based on women, quote, 15 years and older. It makes sense if you include 15 to 17-year-olds that the numbers would be skewed, because
the sad fact of the reality is there are many states in the United States right now in which marriage can be legal for someone who's 15 as long as their parents sign off on it. So it really depends on what you define as a marriageable age. I do find it remarkable here that Gong just loves to take a victory lap on the left-leaning New York Times. Yeah, he wants to see them. He wants to dunk on the New York Times, that's for sure.
Because, of course, 90% or more of the 15 to 17-year-olds live at home with their families and are not married. In fact, as you see, the 2005 census shows that 56.9% of women over age 18, a more marriageable age, are married, and 53% have a spouse present. Among women 30 to 34 years old, 67.3% are married, and among women 35 to 39, again, the important marriageable ages, the U.S. Census indicates 70.5% are married. Another example of media myth becoming fact is the now infamous New York Newsweek story, The Marriage Crunch. You may remember this. The data used was early data from Yale and Harvard researchers, and they projected that the chances of a 30-year-old white, college-educated single woman marrying were 20%.
I have a strong suspicion here that none of these apostles follow Newsweek very carefully. I'm just going out on a limb here.
And we all remember the still quoted tagline. The chances that a 40-year-old woman would be married were, quote, she was more likely to be killed by a terrorist than to marry. That also turns out to be untrue. On the 20th anniversary of its earlier article, Newsweek corrected itself in a new cover story, Why We Were Wrong, Rethinking Marriage After 40. The update recognized 90% of baby boomer women and men either have married or will marry, a ratio that's well in line with historical averages. It also noted, according to the 1996 census, a single woman at age 40 had a 40.8% chance of eventually marrying.
Now, what's important to note is that really over 50% of the modern church is not married. Obviously, that includes children as well. But I believe it's 55% of the church in general is not married. And of course, that presents a unique problem in Mormonism, because in order to get to the highest degree of the celestial kingdom, you have to be married. And if 55% of your even church population isn't married, you're going to have a serious messaging issue here.
Much higher than the 2.7% they had initially calculated. It is true that patterns of hanging out don't help marriage. As Elder Oaks defined, hanging out consists of numbers of young men and numbers of young women in some group activity. It is very different from dating.
It's always nice that we get these 90-year-olds to tell us what hanging out is. Yeah, I'm sure Oaks is a real expert on the hanging out culture. Thanks for the tip there, Dallin.
Also, as you're aware, for some young adults, hanging out can lead to hooking up, variously defined in terms of forms of physical expression without commitment.
I just love that these guys are getting briefed on the hip and getting hip to the pop culture here. I love that.
Also, as you see, U.S. Census data shows that the percentage of men and women over 18 never married is in fact still rising, from 26.8% to 28.2% for men and 19.4 to 21.6% for women in even only the last decade.
And that would continue to rise, and the church is not immune to these cultural influences.
We note that both total number of women and total number of women never married is increasing. The 21.6% over 18 never married translates into 24,318,000 individuals never married across all marriageable age groups.
And I can't emphasize this enough that, again, in order to get to the highest degree of the celestial kingdom, you have to get married to an active Mormon and have to have a temple marriage. And that's why they're decrying this. Is why they're bemoaning this. This is why they're addressing the problems of people not getting married or getting married later in life. People outside the church are like, well, who cares? It doesn't matter. We're all going to be in heaven. That's not according to Mormon theology. That's a big, big problem.
In terms of church implications, you've discussed in great detail that though we lag the world's trend, LDS men and women are marrying later and having fewer children.
And we saw Dallin Oaks bemoan that at the Young Adult Devotional again last year.
Speaking from someone who's on the BYU campus, it's very clear that dilemmas are very real for many of our young men and young women. For young adult women who want to serve missions, but not miss marriage opportunities. For young men and young women who want to pursue education, but not allow education or debt to delay marriage or children. And those who want to plan, but who do not need to see the whole future before making faithful decisions on family and marriage today. You'd know that many of these young women and young men listen very carefully to what you say and teach. So as the recent Ensign reprinted Elder Oaks article on timing, it's so helpful when you continue to teach those correct principles. Indeed, separating marriage myth and fact may help our young LDS adults maintain the faith and hope they need as they seek and commit to marriage today.
Yeah, I mean, Elder Oaks' consistent message, like I said, from the Young Adult Devotional last year, is that you are to get married as fast as possible. The church consistently bemoans the idea of even people waiting until they're 27 to get married, and you should have as many children as possible. This goes back to the first Mormon leaks that we saw, which says that people who get married and in the church are 3 times as more likely to stay active in the church. And of course, the theological implications are very, very acute here, that you're not going to go to the highest degree of the celestial kingdom if you're not married. So they're going to bemoan this, and it's going to be a serious problem that is going to continue even to Mormons of this day. The church and United States culture in general, it used to be a wide divergence. There used to be a lot more women used to have a lot more children. They used to, get married earlier. And we're seeing the church and the United States really get closer and closer together. And pretty soon they will be synonymous.
It's today's update. Comments or questions?
Thank you.
Good job. Well, we're glad you improved everything.
Sometimes the glass is more than half full.
Thank you.
I miss that joke. I don't get it. But I do like Song said, I'd love to hear their explanation of hooking up. Yeah, I wanted to get a more robust definition. I'd like to hear a more robust definition of them hooking up. I guess we'll watch one more. I do like these a lot here. Let me pull one more of these up here. I like these. These are very interesting to see here. Sorry. Mormon leaks. Sorry. Okay, what do we got here? They cracked the jokes about the not gambling. They talked about marijuana. We got that. Addressing the problems of Mormons marrying in later in life. We got that. In which they fret over science and worldly morals. All right, let's check this one out too. I do like these. Have we no conscience? June 11th, 2008. I have a strong feeling that this is going to be talking about abortion, but I don't know.
Good afternoon. Have we no conscience? Coming over the horizon, beginning to be evident but not entirely visible, is an emerging debate. It centers on what some call the science of moral sense. These 3 articles seem at first unrelated. A New York Times article, The Moral Instinct, a Psychology Journal article, Buddhist and Psychological Perspectives on Emotions and Well-Being, and an Ensign lead article, The Light of Christ. All 3 teach moral conscience, and that should be a warning to us to be aware of what the, quote, science of moral sense proposes.
I'm a little confused by the idea of the science of moral sense. Now, science in some ways doesn't have anything to say about morality unless we define morality in the following way. It really depends on how you define morality. Because for me, the church's definition of morality is whatever the president of the church commands, that's moral. It's really an extension of divine command theory. And in that way, science really wouldn't have anything to say about it. But my definition of morality is completely different. I reject divine command theory entirely. My sense of morality is rooted in the well-being of my fellow man. And therefore, science does have something to say about that. Specifically, sociologists, we can study what the outcomes of various stimuli with regards to achieving the goal of the flourishing of our fellow brothers and sisters on this planet. And we can see what works well and what doesn't. For instance, we can easily confirm that slavery has a negative impact on humanity. Therefore, science can weigh in on morality if we define morality as well-being. So I do take issue with this altogether. Again, it depends on how you define morality.
First proposition, descriptively, the science of moral sense says, quote, moral intuitions are being drawn out of people in the lab, on websites and in brain scanners, and are being examined and explained with tools from game theory, neuroscience, and evolutionary biology. Second proposition, prescriptively, quote, the science of moral sense can advance morality. Understanding proposition 1 may help us counter the basic contradiction inherent in proposition 2. Some say a moralization switch employs distinctive mindsets which differentiate, for example, that which is immoral, killing, that which is disagreeable, say Brussels sprouts, that which is unfashionable, say bell-bottoms, and that which is simply imprudent, don't scratch mosquito bites. Clinicians say moral feeling often comes first, followed by rational explanation. That is, feeling first, then some other kind of rationalization. Moral psychologists conducted web experiments involving 200,000 individuals in 100 countries. They found that broad range of people share 5 basic moral norms. Harm, that is, it's bad to harm others and good to help them. Fairness, it's good to reciprocate favors, reward benefactors, and punish cheaters. Loyalty to group or community, respect for authority, and purity.
I mean, this is the entire reason here is we're told that without a celestial dictator, without our sky daddy, that we have no ability to have any morals whatsoever. And this study really shows that people from many different religions, many or no religion at all, have a communal sense, or at least have some sense of basic fairness. We know that other primates have a sense of fairness. Whether they have a morality or not is definitely a difficult question to ascertain. I personally believe that they do not. I believe that animals like dolphins and dogs and other primates have a sense of fairness, but they don't really have a sense of morality, because I really don't feel that those other forms of life really have any type of free will. I believe that they're entirely ruled on instinct. But this is the whole point here. We don't need we don't need the church here to bring us these items. In fact, they're very well explained through our evolution. How did we get morality? As Richard Dawkins has said, there is a completely naturalistic and evolutionary framework as to how we developed our sense of fairness with others. If we were in tribes earlier on and we cheated and we stealed and we hoarded from other people, then if we were sick or anything happened, we had some type of a problem, we would be left to die, because we wouldn't have our fellow primates wouldn't come to our aid. So it was tribes that looked after each other that were more likely to perpetuate their genes. It's all about the Richard Dawkins and the selfish genes. So there's an entirely naturalistic explanation as to where morality came from. And don't forget that, humans have been around on this planet for, some people say 100,000 years, some say 200,000 years. It really depends on who you ask, but let's just say 200,000 years. Well, we didn't have any commands from on high until 6,000 years ago, according to Western civilization, according to the churches, according to the Bible. So for 194,000 years, apparently God sat on his hands and gave no moral dictates whatsoever. That's nonsensical. And then when he finally came down and supposedly gave us a morality, he only gave it to a few people in the Middle East who were illiterate and had no ability to transmit it to the rest of the planet. This is an incredibly bad plan. And luckily for us, there's no good reason to believe that any of it is true. Morality is easily explained. Our altruistic nature is easily explained by our natural selection, by Darwinian natural selection.
I am glad a wicked world cannot extinguish a moral attraction to purity. Current research suggests preschoolers early distinguish societal convention from moral principle. 4-year-olds say it's not okay to wear pajamas to school, what most of us would consider a societal convention, and also it's not okay to hit a little girl for no reason, what we would consider a moral principle. Yet if we ask the same preschoolers, say the principal allowed you to wear pajamas or allowed you to hit the little girl, would these actions then be okay? Most children say if the principals allowed them, it would then be okay to wear pajamas to school. That is, okay to change the social convention, but still not okay to hit a little girl for no reason.
And this is the entire problem with divine command theory, is that divine command theory says that it's okay to hit a little girl so long as the prophet tells you to do it. It's okay to wipe out the Midianites because God allegedly commanded. It's okay to slaughter the Amalekites in the Old Testament. It's okay to flood the entire earth. It's okay to force a rapist in the Old Testament to marry somebody who was raped to marry her rapist. It's okay for the Old Testament to endorse slavery and genocide and the stoning of witches and all kinds of manner of atrocity because your principal or your supposed prophet or supposedly God tells you to do things. And we know even in early children that that is not right, but that is what divine command theory teaches.
Rapidly advancing neurobiology, biochemistry, and gene therapy raise new opportunities and new questions. For example, should church members consider using new drugs or gene therapy to break addiction, counter homosexuality, help shy teenagers become more outgoing, or enhance student performance?
Oh my gosh, I haven't come across these before. Are you kidding me? Counter homosexuality. What does that mean? Counter homosexuality, Elder Gong. What in the world are you talking about there? You know, the church for so many years talked about how gay people was a disease. It was an addiction. And the church encouraged people to go through all kinds of aversion therapy and so-called conversion therapy, where you're supposed to pray the gay away. Church implications to counter. There's no counter to homosexuality, just like there's no counter to heterosexuality. That is an absolute joke that these guys are discussing these.
The question of students using performance-enhancing drugs to concentrate during tests after studying all night is already here. Do any such drugs contradict the word of wisdom? Another question, will new societal definitions of injured or impaired brain or moral functions invite church handbook explanations or explications regarding moral accountability?
Yeah, this is all about updating the church's handbook, because that is really the most important of the standard works. Forget the Book of Mormon, forget the Bible, forget the Doctrine and Covenants, and forget the Pearl of Great Price. The church's handbook of instruction, that's the real governing document of the church, and it's the only one that can be updated. The rest of them are completely static. That just shows you that dogma is not flexible, and the church values its modern interpretations through the church handbook more than anything.
For example, as they may be related to baptism, church discipline, temple worthiness, for those potentially affected. In that light, consider briefly, if you would, please, 2 real-life cases involving accountability after head injury and stroke. The first involves the San Francisco Bay Area food plant manager who ran a plant making delicious salami. In a car accident, he suffers head injuries, which everyone says leave him a slightly different person. One day, inspectors find food safety violations at his plant, place his plant on probation, and say they will return to re-inspect in a month. When the food inspectors arrive a month later, the food plant manager is indeed waiting for them. The plant manager kills the food inspectors according to a careful plan. The issue? Has the plant manager's accident and head injury impaired his moral judgment such that the jury should not hold him responsible for murder?
There's a bigger implication to this thought experiment that Gong puts out. We've had people with brain injuries who completely change their personality whatsoever around. But if it's part of your soul, how can a brain injury affect your personality so much? It really brings into the question the entire aspect here of free will. If doing something to someone's brain can drastically change how they behave or how they act, is free will really a part of a person's core identity? And that's why I continue to say I am not convinced that free will is actually a thing. I'm not convinced that we have free will. I am convinced, however, that we have the appearance of free will, and that's about it. That's the implication of Gong's little thought experiment here. And how is this person supposed to be? This is the entire problem here. How is this person supposed to be judged? They had a brain injury and then they killed someone. Well, that's the entire problem here. if they hadn't had the brain injury, maybe they wouldn't have. How is God going to judge this person? This is the thorny issue of free will to begin with.
A second case. A grandfather serves as a church patriarch and is venerated in his family and community. He suffers a stroke, which seems to leave him a slightly different person. One day, the grandfather fondles a grandchild. Both the child and the family are traumatized. The issue? Has the church patriarch's, the grandfather's, stroke and brain damage impaired his moral judgment such that he should be held accountable in a slightly or different way?
And that's the entire issue, is how is that person then going to be, how can you judge a person, or as how is a maximally powerful being in the afterlife going to judge a person when it appears that their brain injury, that they lost control of their ability to choose? And this entire begs the question to begin with, did they have free will to begin with? That's the entire point here. As Howie Rourke points out, advances in science are disproving the basic agency theology of the church. The idea of agency is incredibly passé. The best that we can say is that we have the appearance of free will, and I'm not able to go any further than that at this time.
In conclusion, a quote, science of moral sense seems a contradiction. It is worth monitoring, especially if it is used to explain away conscience, the light of Christ, or the Holy Ghost. In case you're interested, the jury found the food plant manager guilty. I don't know how the bishop and stake president helped grandfather.
And this is you. Yes, we have to hold the plant manager who killed the people. We have to hold that person accountable in our society. You know, it may be the case that pedophiles are attracted to young persons and that there's nothing they can do about that, in the same way that I'm heterosexual, that I'm attracted to women, or that my brother who's homosexual is attracted to men. It may be the case that those are inherent and there's nothing that they can do about it. However, if they act upon it, we have to hold those people accountable because we have to protect our society. So it's not about blaming the person. It's really about protecting the other individuals in our society. So yes, I agree that that person, that plant manager, should be held accountable for his actions, whether he had the choice to do those things or not.
That's today's update. Hope you have a wonderful week.
Comments? Teddy Roosevelt, when he was president, had a list of what he called weasel words. That one word sucks all the meaning out of another. He talked about the weasels sucking the eggs. And voluntary universal military conscription was one of them. And another. He had a list of them. This.
I'm sorry, I've got to back that up and look at the jokes that Packer is referencing here. Teddy Roosevelt? Was Teddy Roosevelt like president back in like 1930? When was I'm sorry. When was Teddy Roosevelt president? Like 1900s. This is the type of jokes. These are the type of jokes. Because don't forget, Packer here is like 90 years old. So this is like this is who we're cracking jokes on. I gotta back this up for a second here. Hold on for a sec. I want to watch this again, and I want to hear his joke.
And voluntary universal military conscription was one of them. And another.
I don't get it. He said voluntary universal conscription. That doesn't make any sense. Universal conscription in the military is the idea of a draft. But how could you have a voluntary universal conscription? Because draft is involuntary. I don't get the joke here. One more time here. Maybe that's why nobody else is laughing.
When his president had a list of what he called weasel words. That one word sucks all the meaning out of another. He talked about the weasels sucking the eggs. And voluntary universal military conscription was one of them. And another. He had a list of them. This is the case. Science and morality. Those two words, they might go together, but science has got a lot to learn first. We've got to.
Science has a lot to learn about morality. Well, let's see what the church has to say about morality. I already went through some of these things. The church believes in the Old Testament where slavery was condoned. The Bible also condones the stoning of witches. The Bible tells rapists that they need to, people who've been raped, that they need to marry their rapist. The Bible condones the idea that we should be cutting off people's foreskins, as David did, 1,000 foreskins to win favor. The Bible condones polygamy. The Bible condones all kinds of reprehensible actions, including the treating of women as second-class citizens, where Paul said, I do not suffer women to speak or to rule in the church. The Bible condemns it's what we would consider to be homosexuality now, but the idea of a man lying with another man. These are the morals that we need to learn from, is these biblical injunctions, or Brigham Young's bizarre doctrines of the blood atonement, or throwing a javelin through somebody, or the evils of interracial marriage, or of denying people, black persons, the ability to enter the temple, or this is what science needs to learn from religion. Look, every single thing that we've ever learned on this planet, every time that we learn something, science moves religion out of the way. And there's not been one thing ever that religion has moved science the other direction. Science continues to move religion out of the public sphere. And it's never been the case that religion has taught science anything. End of story, mic drop.
At least admit that there's something spiritual in. So, any other comments?
It's timely that, as always, Garrett's so timely and up to date, but there's just a lot being written about this right now in the popular press across a wide spectrum.
Well,
the one subject in which the handbook currently treats this, there is some reference to the bishops making a judgment of whether to baptize or ordain a mentally retarded child.
Notice that with very few exceptions, in all of church administration, the Lord has organized presidencies, 3, with the president and 2 counselors. And that's great insurance against something like this.
What does that answer mean? What in the world is Packer just off the deep end? He makes nonsensical statements. He doesn't address anything here.
Notice that with very few exceptions, in all of church administration, the Lord has organized presidencies, 3, with the president and 2 counselors. And that's great insurance against something like this.
What? Well, Packer is way too old to be running these type of things. And notice this entire thing is literally like a board of directors. We get a briefing, we toss around some ideas, and then we update the handbook. That's literally what we get in the corporate boards of directors. Again, what we see from these behind the scenes is the church leaders acting like corporate board members and not special witnesses of the name of Jesus. And don't forget that the church has decried for many centuries, or at least for a couple of 100 years, the evils of the councils that went on, like the Nicene Creed, the Athanasius councils, and these other councils that early Christendom went through in order to codify the doctrine of the Trinity, or to figure out which books are supposed to go in the Bible. And they said, these are just the councils of men. What I see in these WikiLeaks documents and these items here is a bunch of councils of men. And like for success, what Packer here he's totally nonsensical in his jokes. Nobody understands it. It makes no sense. And then when he's trying to weigh in on these things, he doesn't make any sense as well. Every time you get these very old church leaders into these positions, they really are not at the top of their game. What we have in the church with the last man standing doctrine is a very harmful practice. And we know that people's mental acuity really peaks around the age of, I don't know, the late 20s. If you look at all of the chess champions, I play a lot of chess myself. Guess what? The world champions of chess, once they hit 35, they're way beyond the pale. We've never had a chess champion who really is older than that, because that's where your mental acuity really peaks, is maybe around the late 30s, maybe early 30s, late 20s. Before you guys go, I just want to thank you so much for another edition of Real Talk Mormonism, number 10. Really appreciate you guys coming in. Hit the like, hit the subscription. Really appreciate that. I've got a lot of good content coming down the pike on the Mormon News Roundup and the Mormon movie reviews. Thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Have a great night.